Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hunt household. We're here in the LDRS Creative studio. This has been my day, I'm telling you. If it could go wrong today, it has gone wrong. So I'm very, very grateful to be here in my comfy place, my creative space. And I'm apparently Dr. Seuss tonight. So anyway, we've got another Halloween thing behind us here. I thought it'd be fun to do something kind of spooky, and I absolutely love that house. Isn't that just like the coolest thing with the greens and the blacks and stuff? So I thought it'd be fun because I'm actually going to be working with the same stamps and in some of the same dies that we did on Tuesday. But we had so many questions come up with the stuff that I was working on, and so I thought that I would go a little more into detail on some things. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me. Uh-oh. Something's freezing on my screen over here. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight, Thursday. My husband has that up in front of me so I don't mess that up. And I got to see some of your comments already. It's always so much fun to see everybody, kind of coming in and saying hello and saying what you guys are doing and how your day went and if it's warm where you are or raining or whatever it is. It's just kind of fun to see where everybody is. So thank you guys all for being here. We have a lot to cover, so I'm actually going to kind of jump right in. Like I said, we had, there were a lot of people who were asking questions during the live in regards to like how I had colored the images, the Halloween things on Tuesday. And then we had some other questions come up about the slimline dies and not necessarily what to do with the largest dies, but what do you do with the smaller dies, all those accessory dies that we put in there, because those are really, really important. And they're really fun. And that's what really sets our slimline dies apart from any other companies that I've seen out there, is that we make it so you guys can customize and kind of put your own spin on your dies instead of just accepting, and saying, hey, this die has hearts down the center, I'm going to have to do something with little heart windows, or this one has circles down the center, I'm going to have to do that. We like to give you guys the flexibility. It gives you a lot more for your money. And because dies are expensive, and so we want to make sure that you guys are really getting your money's worth out of it. So we have a question up here already. Stephanie is saying, what watercolor paper do you use? I actually use a variety of watercolor papers. Depends on what I'm working with. The one that I have on hand right here, I'm going to switch my camera real quick so I can answer that question before we dive into everything else. All right, let me get rid of my green screen stuff here. So this is the watercolor paper that I use when I'm coloring with my Carin markers. It's Fabriano Cold Press Artistico Extra White. This is Fabriano. First of all, the brand is absolutely fantastic. It's my favorite one to use. But when I'm using the Carin markers, I find that this exact one works the best in allowing that color to move across the page with the water. So this is the one that I have on hand at most right now. So, but for today's purposes, let me get my glasses on. I want to go over some things here. Before we get into, let me see, I've stamped up, I'm going to show you. Before we get too deep into things, I want to explain a little bit about these slimline dies, because both of our die sets have the largest die. This is an outer die, and then we have this other die that is called a nested die. And I want to show you, I'm hoping, let me get this brightness down a little bit, because I want to explain to you what you're looking at when you look at a die. And I'm going to open this one up too, because just by looking at the die, you should be able to tell if it's going to cut or if it's going to deboss or score. Some people will say score, some will say deboss. Now, let me get this one here, because this one I think is going to be the easiest to see. When you look at this die, you can see that we have this really high raised line around the edge here. Do not ever run your finger around that, because that is actually a blade, and that's going to cut into the paper. So whatever shape you have, this one happens to be a large scallop, it's going to cut the paper into that shape. Now if you look at the inside here, we left this open. You do not see that raised edge on the inside, back in here. So that tells me when I look at this, I don't have another cut line, or I don't have another blade on the inside. So I'm going to get a cut on the outside, but I'm not going to get a cut on the inside. When you see this empty die like this with the flat edge like that, that will allow you then to run this die through your machine, through your die cutting machine a second time using that little foam pad that comes with it. And that's going to allow you to emboss that shape. Now, embossing goes up from the paper, so that's going to raise up from the paper. Debossing or scoring goes down into the paper. So when you have this empty space with no cut line, that's going to allow you to run it, like I said, through a second time and emboss the paper up through that, creating a little bit of a frame. Now, this, you're going to see, we have that cut line on the edge, all around the outside, goes all the way around. And then we have this little dotted or dashed line. Now this is very sharp. If I run my finger over it gently, I can feel how sharp it is. Again, it's a blade. That is going to cut a stitch deep down into, like, it's going to cut it all the way through your paper, just like this outer blade is going to do. So that's going to give you the look of a stitch as though you put it through your machine. No, I don't think you need to zoom this part, Alan. So this die here, this is what we would call a nested die. Let me move these things over a bit. Now this die does not have a blade on the outside. It has a blade on the inside. So this one we actually, this is a scallop die, but we did kind of, it's a reverse scallop because it has a scallop on the inside. But that is a blade that's going to cut on the inside. So if I run this one through on my paper, it is not going to cut anything on the outside. It's going to do nothing because there's no blade there. But it's going to cut that beautiful scalloped rectangle on the inside. But if I nest these two together and I run them through at the same time, all right? So that means I'm going to put these down on my paper just like so. It would go like this. I would line them up so they're centered, put a little bit of tape on there on my paper, and run it through with the two in there. It's going to give me a cut line on the outside, a stitch, and then it's going to give me this cut line on the inside. So it's actually going to cut that space open, and it's going to create a frame. And you're going to get a frame that is very similar to this idea right here. All right, except you'll have scallop on the inside. I did this one with the two largest dies that we have in the slimline corner scallop here. So that's why we have that corner scallop. So this one then would yield the same kind of thing where it's a frame where the inside is cut, but it would have a scallop on the inside. All right. So that's the intention behind these. Let me move these things.
I have a dumb question.
What's your question, Alan?
Can you nest the opposite one from the other packaging?
You absolutely can. And I was actually going to, so Alan is asking, can we mix and match? And yes, you can. Now, what's the difference between this outer die and this outer die? They're the exact same size. All right, so they're from two different sets. They're the exact same size. So our slimlines are 3 1/4 inches wide by 8 1/4 inches long. But they're the exact same with the exception of the stitch. This stitch is more like a stitch and a dot and a stitch and a dot and a stitch and a dot. Whereas this is a stitch and a stitch and a stitch and a stitch. So it has a different pattern to the stitching. And yes, you can mix and match them. That was his question. So can I use this outer die with this scalloped nested die? Absolutely. And I actually did exactly that in the sample that I showed you. I used, because I didn't want the stitch dot, I wanted stitch, 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 stitch. That one is in the die from the slimline scallop right here. And then I wanted to have that corner scallop, which is a part of the slimline corner scallop die. So I crossed the two, mixed them together, and created another unique frame by mixing and matching. Okay? So you have a lot of options when you do these, and those options are only involving the two largest dies of the set. So you just wait until we get into the rest of them. There's a lot of stuff you can do. Did I do that wrong? Yep, I got that in the wrong one. This one actually goes over here. All right, and if you're not sure, we put the images on the packaging so you can always see what goes where if you mix them up. All right, so let me put this away here. Elizabeth, aka IBELF, was asking about some of the accessory dies that are in here. And so I want to show you some of these. I cut a bunch of samples here to show you what you get. So we're going to start with this one. And I'm not covering absolutely everything because, you know, once you see some of it, you can kind of get the gist of it. But I do have a lot of samples here to show you, so you get an understanding of what you can do with these. So let's start with this floral, this flower right here. You separate these apart. Okay. Now I believe when I looked at the picture, Elizabeth, the picture that you put on Facebook, it looked to me like you used the floral die with the next die, the next nested die right here, just like this, and did your cut. Now I've already explained that first die, which has the cut line on the outside. This next die does not have a cut line on the outside. Instead, let me see if I can get this to
Autofocus?
autofocus. Is that going to autofocus, Alan?
I don't know. It's pretty thin. You might have to take your fingers, put one hand on there.
Put one hand where? Yeah, maybe we should zoom at this point, just a little
One
bit.
hand on it.
Yeah, why don't we just zoom a little bit at this point?
Where you want to go all the way in?
Just a bit more, about half, a little bit more than that. A little more. Okay, right there is good. Okay. So on this flower, we have the cut line on the outside. And then this next one does not have a cut line on the outside. What it has instead is stitching. And if you very gently put your finger on that, you'll see how sharp that is. So it's going to cut that stitching into your paper. So that is going to yield, let me see if I have one right here. I know I have it. That is going to give you this right here. And I believe this is exactly what you had, Elizabeth, only yours was in black. So it cuts on the outside and then it cuts that stitching into it. Now this next one, oh, and by the way, if I only cut with the flower, this is what I get. And then when I add in the second circle, I get this. Let me move everything over so you can see. All right. So first we have this one. That is the flower by itself. This is the flower with the first nested die. Now if you wanted to have another circle cut, you can add the third nested die, which is this one. When cut on its own, it's going to give you this right here. Okay? But if I nest it into this one, meaning if I line these two up just like this on my machine, put this one inside it, it's going to give me this. All right? Because this third one has a cut line around the outside, which is a blade, and then it has stitching on the inside. It's a stitch and a dot and a stitch and a dot. And so because it has that cut line, I can then pop that out. And that's going to allow me that I can use that frame on its own. Or if I want, I can put the frame down. I could put foam on the back of this and maybe stamp a sentiment on here. And I can pop that up so it's just above that flower and it gives me instant dimension. Okay? We can continue down that path if we have the next two dies here. Okay? So the next two dies, we have a flower here, which is very similar to the largest flower. It has the cut line on the outside. But because we're, getting smaller and smaller and smaller, we can't just keep putting teeny tiny little dies in there. They become useless. So this one we have the cut line on the outside of the blade, and then we have a stitch on the inside. That is going to give you this flower right here. All right? And then we have the smallest die, which is this little circle. Let me move these up now. All right, so then we have the smallest die, which is this little circle. And that, if I cut it on its own, is going to give me that little circle, which if I want to put it up on foam, I can put it right up above that little flower. Same thing with this. If I wanted to put that up above this, I could do that. A little bit of foam and put it right up there to have some dimension. But if I were to put this circle die into the center of this one and cut my paper with those together, it's going to cut the circle out of my flower, just like so. It would look like this, okay? And then I can pull that circle out and I end up getting a little frame. And then again, I can layer that over the top, or I can use this little circle separately. So that's all the different options that you can get, you know, and again, if I want to layer this on top of this one, and I want to further layer this on here, and I want to really build that up with foam and get a lot of dimension and get a really, I mean, a beautiful dimensional flower. It's basically going to look like this, only it's going to be built up with foam. Beautiful dimensional flower. And then we have, of course, this other die in the center of the squares. That one right there is actually a leaf. And when you cut that, you get this beautiful leaf with the stitching down the center. And so then I can actually add, some leaves to my flower. I can add a little line with a stem, and I can build those leaves out, and I can create some really, really crafty and adorable flowers. So with just these dies right here, these accessory dies, you can do all of that. And you can build up a lot of different layers and combinations, beautiful colors, pastels for spring if you want, beautiful vibrant colors for summer. You can get into your orange and your corals and things like that for fall, and you can do some really, really gorgeous things. These, I mean, you can cut these, like these little frames here. You can cut this right through the center of your slimline card base and have little windows that are in the shape of flowers. You can do some or you can just put it directly on, you know, on the right onto your card, which is actually what I'm going to be doing for you guys as we move through this little demonstration. So hopefully I'm answering some questions. Are there any questions that anybody has? Things that I haven't covered just with this little bit here, because I am going to be doing more. So if you do have questions, please put them out there. Alan is always standing by to ask me about something. If you don't understand something that I'm talking about, please get your questions out there. Now is the time. Oops, I'm not putting these on here very well, but that's okay. All right, so here's a couple more examples of some flowers and things that I did just to show you different variations that you can do. When you have this circle here, of course, you can pop that right out. So let's see. I also wanted to show you these squares. Let me move these over. Now the squares, we don't have as many dies, but I want to show you how versatile they are. We have 2 of these squares. And let me see. So the very first square on its own cuts this right here. Okay. All on its own. We have a cut line, then we have stitching. So it's going to cut that stitching. Then we have another cut line. It's a solid line. And then we have stitching again. Ellen, I'm not sure if we're focused right here.
It's focused right here.
Okay. Now you'll notice that this pops out of here. All right. You already saw that with the circles, and you can have a little frame. And you saw me use this on Tuesday. And then we have this other piece here that you can pop up, or you can actually inset those down below if you want as well. All right, so that's what you get with that one. And then this little die on the inside has an interior scallop. That is your cut line. There's no cut line on the outside. If you cut that by itself, you're going to get this piece, which is perfectly and beautifully sized to mount right on the top of that square. If I cut with these 2 together, nested like this, I'm going to get this piece right here, exactly like this. And this is where we have our little frame, and then it cuts that reverse scallop out of the centerpiece just like that and creates a second frame. And then of course you also have this other piece that you can layer in there as well. Okay? So a lot of options again with the square. Now I also want to point out that we have a couple of add-on die sets. We have this one called Stitch Square. And the reason I'm mentioning these as I'm covering these slim lines is because they're sized so that they work really, really well with them. It's a really great accessory die to go with them. So you're going to get these 3 dies, and they have basic stitching around them, but it's actually double stitched. So if I lined all 3 of these up on my paper, I went ahead and I already ran it through my machine. This is what you get with each of them. Okay, so you can see that the large square, let me get this off of here, the large square has stitching on the inside. It also left us some stitching on the page. Okay, so it has a stitch on both sides of the cut line. So if you want to cut a frame out of your card and you want to have some beautiful stitching, that's how you're going to do it. You're going to use something that has a stitch on the outside of the cutting blade. But we also give you a stitch on the inside so that the layer that you get when you cut that out also has stitching. And it works that way for all 3 of these. And these are also sized to go really, really nicely if you want to layer these together. So I've taken the orange scallop from the slim line and I put that right over the piece that was cut out with the largest stitch square. I can also place that, if this is the inside, if this is like on my card that I cut out, I can put that frame on the inside of that as well. So I can do some really, really pretty layering. And so maybe I've taken this other piece and I put it down, you know, behind it, and I pop this up. And I mean, you can really play with those, and you can do that a lot with all of these different pieces. You're going to see that this square here is going to layer very nicely with that one as well. So you have a lot of different options with it. I wanted to show you how those do coordinate. It just kind of extends what you can do with the dies when you take a look at the accessory pieces that we have as well. We call that an add-on. So let me move these out of the way. I'm not going to worry about putting everything away right now because I don't want to spend the time doing that. And then of course the hearts are going to work the same way. When we move over to the slimline scallop, I didn't go ahead and cut all of these because I think I've covered it with the first one. When we move into the slimline scallop, this one right here, you saw me work with this the other day. This one actually creates a window. Alan, do you want to grab a card for me? There's a card right over there in that box. It's the one that I did with the windows. I think it's right underneath the Halloween, right underneath that. The one with the windows. Yeah, you just keep looking. Okay. So he's going to get that one for me. And then I want to talk to you about this. This circle right here. Nope, the one with the windows that open. Windows. There you go. It's the one, that one right there. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. This is the one with the windows. You guys haven't seen this yet, but notice these little windows open up on here. Okay. And on this one too. All right. That's what this die does. So what I did here is I used this die, I ran it through the machine, it cut out this little window piece here for me, and then I used 2 of the dies from this stitch square, and I cut out the pieces that are behind it to layer them up. And so I just wanted to show you how this particular square coordinates perfectly also. It's sized very specifically to work with this other add-on stitch die set. So the same goes with the circles here. So these circles are going to give you, these are single stitch circles. You get several of them in here. And there's 2 more there. I'm sorry, they're not single stitch, they're double stitch, I was wrong. They're double stitch, so you have the stitch line and then a cut line and then a stitch line. So they work exactly like the stitch square. So that was my error in my what I was saying. So they're going to work exactly the same way as the squares. And these are going to coordinate with our stitch circles here. So I do have the sample here that I wanted to show you how it works. Very similar, exactly the same actually as with the squares, where you have the stitching on the outside and then you have the other layer here that you're left with. Okay. Now the way that these coordinate together with the stitch circles and the circles that are in the slimline is that they are sized so that when we're designing, you can only put them so close together if you the die designs. And so these are nested perfectly inside one another, but if you wanted them to be even closer, then you're going to notice that the largest die on the outside of the stitch circle is perfectly sized. It is the next size up from the largest die on the slimline scalloped. And then you would then go to the next largest die on the stitch circle. And then you would go 1 die smaller to the slimline die. Then you would go to, here they are here. So it would go like this. If I'm not making any sense. I should have cut them all. I wasn't thinking. So it would be this particular die. Then this one would be the next size, because that comes from the slimline. And then we would go to the stitched circle. Then you would go to the next smallest die from the slimline, and then you will go back to the, so it alternates. They each increment down 1 size. So you have options there to get even tighter with the way that you're layering and nesting the layers together on your card. So it gives you some really nice options there. And they're all double stitched, which I think is just gorgeous. I think it's fantastic. I love double stitching because it just gives you that extra little bit of detail. It ends up looking like it was hand stitched, or not hand stitched, but machine stitched. Like I actually used to machine stitch my cards. I don't do that anymore, but I used to. So I think that covers a lot of these. We have any questions from anybody, Alan?
Not that I've seen.
Okay. Hopefully you guys aren't bored. So the next thing, and hopefully this will be a little more fun, is we're going to do some coloring, because I had some questions on the coloring that we did the other night. So, well, I didn't do the coloring the other night, but I had images that were already colored, and there were a lot of people that said, hey, how did you do that? So I thought I would cover that, and then if there's enough time, we're going to put the card together. So I've already got my my images stamped. So this again is my sample version of the Happy Haunting 6x8 stamp set. Excuse me. And you can see some of them are darker because I've stamped with them, and they are just beautifully loved. And then we're going to line it up, and Alan's going to do some die cutting for us with the coordinating die set. So I've already gone ahead and I've stamped these, because I don't want you guys to be bored watching me stamp. Now I'm going to be coloring with Copics. Let me put this out of the way. I'm going to be coloring with Copics. You guys can color with whatever you want. And I will go over which colors I use. Copics are my go-to when it comes to an alcohol marker. When I color, I typically will start, I always go light to dark when I'm coloring with whether it's with Copics or paints or whatever it is. And there's a number of reasons. One of them being it's easier for you to pull. If I were to start with a darker color and then I got close to it with a lighter color, it's easy for me to pull a darker color into the wrong space. And it's going to be much harder for me to clean that up or fix it. So I'm going to start with an E000, and I've got this stamped, and let me get all fuzzies off of here. And I'm just going to go in and very gently color around her face, place some color.
Want to go in now?
Huh?
Want to zoom in?
No, I think it's actually pretty good, like right where it is. I tend to dot things around a little bit and move my color around. And I tend to go very, very light on the center of the face. So this one is my E000. Actually, I'm going to go to the hands or the arms. And then I think that's it. I don't know if I'm going to get to coloring him, but we'll see. And then this is an E21. I'm not looking for a realistic look on her skin, but I'm just going to kind of give her a little bit of life, a little bit of shadow, just to show, oh, I forgot her neck, just to show that, that there's a little bit of shadow and definition to her face. And again, I'm not going for a real look on it. I mean, I just want it to look fun and sweet and have just a little bit of depth. I used to spend a lot of time, I've got this all skewed. I used to spend a lot of time trying to make everything look so real and so perfect, and I don't do that anymore. I just want to have just kind of fun with it and make it look sweet. So I'm just kind of blending that in just a tiny little bit, leaving that extra bit of white right in the center of her face. I may have gone a little too dark. If you go too dark in the center, then just add a little more of that shadow on the outside, and it's going to suddenly brighten up what you've done, you know, like wherever you've gone a little too dark. Okay? So that's all I would do on her face there, is just that. Now, people were asking about the some of the lines that I left, some of the white space that I left. So I'm going to work with two greens. I have YG. I can't do that. I'm not crazy about this camera, Alan.
Okay.
It's
Move it closer to you.
I can't.
Move the pens in the middle of the screen.
There we go. YG23 and G24. Sorry, we're trying out a new camera today, so we're kind of testing out and trying to figure out how it's going to work with the focus on it. So I'm going to start light with my YG23, and I'm going to drop some color in here. I think I went maybe a little too dark with this one. I think I was supposed to go one lighter with it, but that's okay. So I'm going to drop that color in there, and then down here where I have these little pleats, I'm going to leave that little bit of white space in there. So I'm only going to go right up along the line. See how I left that tiny little bit of white? That's what you guys were seeing when somebody was asking, what did I do with that white space? Did I use a little white marker? What did I do? Left a little bit of white there. Okay. And then I'm going to come in with my darker color, and I'm going to leave a little bit of an edge of that green because I don't want the whole thing to be dark. Leave some little whiter areas in here. Same kind of thing. So it leaves those highlights. Can you see that little bit of highlight? It just makes all the difference, I think, anyway. So I'm going to pull this in here, go up with that. I'm going to leave a tiny little bit, very, very faint line of that light green. And it just gives you a little bit of dimension on it. So now I'm going to go over with my darker color and add a little bit in there. But I'm not covering it completely. So just that tiny little bit. And then I'm going to go back to my lighter color and kind of blend that together and still leave that little bit of white. So I'm kind of going alongside where that color was placed, where the darkest color was placed, and pull that down. Somebody asked, Jen is saying, does LDRS have electronic gift cards? That's a good question. I don't think we do.
I don't know if you have a way to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have a way to do it. I don't think we have that, but that's definitely something we should look into. There we go. I made that one a little bit smaller. Andrew is saying, what paper is the best to use when coloring? The paper that I'm using right now with alcohol markers, and that's an excellent question. I use Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock, 110 pound cover weight. We're actually working on getting this into the store as well. That's what I use whenever I'm working with my alcohol markers. So now I'm going to go to the little bit of green on her socks, and I'm just coloring that in full. Okay. Now I'm going to go to her hair, and I'm not really worried about having her hair have a lot of dimension. I just wanted her to have like this red hair because I thought it would be really pretty. And so the color I'm using here, let's let that focus, is YR27. Why doesn't that want to focus, Alan? Can I move it over here maybe? Oh, there. Maybe I didn't have it straight up enough. YR27. That's what I'm using for her hair. I think it's kind of a really pretty kind of auburn, orangey red. And I just colored her hair in solid. I seriously did not care. I don't have a whole lot of space to get a lot of color in here, so I didn't care too much about having a lot of highlights in there. The most important things on her, in my opinion, are her hat and her dress. So I wanted to make sure that those had the colors that I wanted. So here I've got Y18. I'm having trouble working this thing, Alan.
Well, you got to be in the middle.
I am. I can't get it to do it. It's very frustrating.
Focused on the background right now.
Yeah, but we're going to have to do something about that.
Sideways a little bit.
We're going to have to do, I can't spend an hour trying to focus my markers.
Okay.
So we got to work that out.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
this is Y18. Sorry about that, everybody. So I did a little bit of Y18 for the gold on her little buckle there. And then I'm going to go back to my green. So I have YG23. And I'm going to leave that little bit of white, just like so. Oops. That tiny little bit of white right there. It's very, very small. And then I'm going to come in a little bit lower at the base, a little bit of that darker color, which is my G24. And then back to my Y23 to just kind of blend those together. And that gives me that little bit of a highlight. Now next, we're going to give a little bit of purple on her dress. And I chose, let's see if I can get these to focus, V04, right here, V04 and V06. It is not focusing. I don't know what to do. Okay. We have anybody yelling at me over the markers?
No, it's more the video keeps freezing.
The video keeps freezing?
Yes.
I'm sorry, everybody. We don't have control over the video freezing. That's, I wonder if that has to do with the bad weather that's all around.
Streaming service.
It's the streaming service? Okay, so now I've got that little bit of that lighter color down first, and now I'm just going into the edges of the darker area with the V06, and now back to V04, just to blend that out a tiny little bit, leaving those little bitty white spaces there. It just gives a little bit of lift and like a little bit of movement to her dress. And then I'm going to do, there we go, the little bit of ruffle there. Now, I almost forgot to put that yellow, which is Y18, up on that little star. So let's get that on there. So the next thing is going to be, let me get my ends. Now I've got N0 and 1, 3, 5, and 7. So starting with 0, and then I go up to, I go odds after that, odd numbers. So I'm going to add, because I want this to be black, and I chose my N grays, because they're neutral. So it's not going to give me any kind of a blue or any kind of a warm or a brown kind of a tone to it. So I'm going in with this little bit of color just to kind of mark where I want things. And I'm going to come around and I'm going to leave that tiny little bit of white around the rim. All right, that's that little bit of highlight that you saw me leave before. So I'm kind of marking where I want the color to go. With my lightest color, this is my N0. I'm going to come right up the line here and leave that little bit of white along that black line. And then I'm going to color everything else in solid. I just realized a little bit of green I forgot somewhere. I forgot to put green in the inside of that little buckle. So I'm going to get that in there. All right, so that was my N0. Now I go up to N1. And I'm going to do the same thing, go over the same space. And I gradually go up in color. Now here, I'm going to leave a little bit of white space right in between those where that line would be. This is where I'm very, very careful. All right. And then straight up. And I kind of angle it out. I don't know if you notice it gets a little bit wider as it goes up. Gives me a real nice division of the colors and of the pieces or the parts of the hat. Let me get a little bit on her shoes while I'm thinking about it. And then up to my next color, N3. Now I know this part seems a little bit tedious, but it really is important to build the color slowly. So you can see what you're going to get and make sure you're layering it in there nicely. I'm going to turn my card. That little bit of white makes all the difference. Sorry, sometimes I go a little quiet when I'm being really precise. Alan, do we have any questions?
No, we just went offline.
We just went offline? Oh man, seriously? How bad? Everywhere? Oh no. Can you see if we're back?
Yep.
All right, Alan said we were offline there for a moment. I'm so sorry, I don't know what's going on. I know we had all that kind of stuff happen once before where we had trouble with it.
Yeah, at least it's coming back.
Yeah. All right, so I think this is as dark as I'm going to go. I'm not going to go up one more gray. But you could see how when you're building up your grays, you get a beautiful look of black without it being so harsh. It's still not dark enough to cover up the lines that I have of the image, yet it looks black. Let me get that little bit right there. I don't like that. There we go. See how cute she is? That's all there is to it. It only takes a few minutes. I want to show you, how much time do we have? We're running a little bit short on time. I want to show you how I did this, like this little pumpkin here. This is my Y18. First thing I did with the pumpkin was I actually came in with yellow. And I come in and color the entire pumpkin, well, with the exception of the stem, in this golden yellow, which is really, really pretty. Just like so. And then I went up to Y38, which is kind of a yellowy orange. And then I pay attention to that same concept where around where the pieces come together, I leave that little bit of an edge of that yellow. So you can see it's almost like a crescent kind of a shape there. So it leaves that little bit of highlight. It's really going to pop out even more once I put the next color on. You'll see it. All right. Now the next color up is YR. So I went to a yellow red. It's YR68. And then this one, I'm pulling in just like that. Leaving that little bit of a highlight. It's not completely all around the edges. Some of the edges touch, but some of them don't. And then I grabbed a YR27, which is very dark, but I wanted to have that, I wanted to give it that bend. So I'm just kind of flicking up a little bit in the areas where the pumpkin curves. Tiny, tiny little bit. You don't need a lot, especially on this smaller pumpkin here. And then I'm going to blend that out just a bit with my YR68. Just blend that a tiny little bit so that color all comes together. See how pretty? It's actually really simple to do it. This one has a little bit too much yellow showing, so I'm going to go over it with a little bit of orange that I have and just tone that down. There we go. That's all there is to those little pumpkins. It just takes a couple of minutes. I do want to show you what I did with this house, because I think that was fun. Actually, I'm not going to show you on that house. I'm going to show you on this house, because that way we can actually get to building the card. So I stamped this, and I wanted to point this out to you as well. See, this is the stamp that I used, but I only used a portion of it. I actually took my purple tape, and on the back side of the stamp, I covered part of it that I didn't want to stamp. I covered it with my purple tape just to mask it off, so I was only inking up the portion that I want, because the whole thing wasn't going to fit in the space that I wanted to use. And so this is what I ended up with. Oh, I have a pumpkin I got to color here. Let's get that one colored really quick. We're going to do the same thing that I did on the other. You can see how quickly it comes together.
I think we lost Facebook.
We lost Facebook entirely?
I think so.
Seriously?
Yeah.
It's not coming back at all?
Nope, it did come back on one of them.
Oh man. I wonder if it has anything to do with the storms that are out and about everywhere. You know?
I don't think so.
Guys, I'm so sorry. I'm not happy that we're losing our connections. Feeling really bad. So there's that little pumpkin. Okay. So I've got V01, V04, and V06. Oh, now see, now that came in really nicely. That actually zoomed in beautifully, focused. Alan, you know what? I'm going to have Alan cut a couple of things here. I know I'm jumping around, but I'm looking at the time. I want to get this little guy colored here too. And I'm just moving back to my grays. And I want to have Alan cut out the pieces so that I can put the card together. So I'm leaving a little bit. This is my N0. It's my gray. Leaving a little bit of white. I'm going to move up to N1. Leave some tiny little bit of white in here just for some some dimension. A little bit of shadow around his face. And then I'm going to go up to N3, I think is as dark as I'm going to go with him. So I know I'm doing this one fast. I just want to be able to finish the card for you guys. A little bit of shadow there. And then I'm going to blend everything out so I don't, with my N0, so I don't have those bright, bright white areas. I think they're too white. There we go. So I'm going to get these dies on here, and we're going to let Alan cut this out. And then while he's taking care of that, I'm going to get that other house, I'm going to get that house colored up for you guys. So, I'll tell you, time goes by so much faster than I expect. So I'm going to go ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and tape. Where's my tape? I'm going to go ahead and get these taped on here. Line this up. Nice and easy. And then, who else do I have? Here's my bigger pumpkin. Here he is. Here's that pumpkin. There's this one. And here he is, right here. I've got my cats that are, that's not that one, it's the other cat. Let's see. This one goes on this cat somehow. I'm going to have to look at the back. There we go. This one goes on here. So line this up on the cat that I already stamped. This one, where does it go? Do I have the wrong? Here we go. Always helps. This is why we always put the images on the back, because I thought, how does that die go on that cat? I couldn't figure it out. And I've done it before. Stephanie's shaking her head at me. But that's just the way it goes, right? To get my purple tape on here, oh, I got to color the top of these little pumpkins. Well, I'll get that in a minute. Okay. I always put the blade side down. I forgot this little guy here. Oopsie. I'm just burning time. There we go. Almost forgot to put this one down. Is that upside down? It is. Put that on there. Okay. So Alan, I have a present for you. If you can run that through. And I'm going to go ahead and finish coloring this up. So I have my yellow. I'm just going to put some yellow on these stars. There isn't a whole lot of coloring on this one. But I wanted to grab these purples. Actually, before I go into the purple, I want to put yellow in the windows. I'll show you how fast this comes together. Yellow in the windows. There we go. Get a little bit of yellow. Just set it down, honey. A little bit of orange on this pumpkin. Just like so. We can leave it at that. We don't need all the layers. This is my lighter green going on the shutters. I put it up above as well. And I'm going to get some green here in this door. So I think that'll show up really nicely. Let's get some green on. I think about where all the little different colors are going to be. And I'm going to get some green on the roof. I love this green and the purple. I think it's so pretty. So that was my lighter green. A little bit of shadow with the darker green. Not a lot, just a tiny little bit. All right. And then I'm going to blend that back out with the lighter green. Not all the way to the edge, just a little bit. And that just gives it that little bit of highlight in some areas. Now for the purples, I love these purples. I've got this violet, it's V01. I'm going to go ahead and place this V01 everywhere that I don't already have some color. I probably could have made that green right there. That's part of the roof.
How tall is the little witch? You know?
How tall is the little witch? I don't know. That's a good question, though. You want to get her measured over there?
Sure.
You could probably measure her right here on my workspace. I'm going to get a little bit of green right up above this window and up above that one because I missed them. So how tall is that little? Did you cut her out? Can you take those off there, get the tape and stuff off of those? Would you mind? So now I'm going to go up to V04. Sorry, we're running a little bit behind. So I want to try and catch up a little bit. And I'm going to bring a little bit of this purple into here. But not a whole lot because I want to leave a glowing kind of a look. I'm literally just dotting this in. I want it to end up kind of having a glowing kind of a look in some of the areas. So I'm not coming in, I'm just kind of staying around the edges. And I know it looks really choppy right now, but it's going to come together, I promise you. Now this one is my darker one, which is my V06, and I'm going to use this very, very sparingly in the darkest of areas. In the corners, just a tiny little bit. Underneath, you know, where I want it to look like something is kind of set in a bit. So where we have like the different levels of the house. In the bottom little corners here. And now I go to my lightest color and I start pulling those in together. Go over my lightest area. It's going to soften once it dries too. So it's going to go on a little bit darker and it's going to soften a bit when it dries. Making circles to blend. Just a little bit, not too much. But you can see how it just kind of starts to create like this glowing kind of a look of that purple. Pulling the color down in some areas where it's kind of pulling away. The nice thing about this paper and your markers is that you can use the marker, you can use that soft brush tip to push that color where you want it to be. So I have a concentration of color down here at the bottom. If I flick upwards, I can move some of that color up so that it blends together. So you kind of got to think of it as though you're pushing the paper, I'm sorry, as though you're pushing paint across the page. Okay? And it'll start to give that little bit of a glowing kind of a look that I think is so pretty. Look how that purple just looks like it's glowing. I love it. And then we have some of the darker areas there. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of I'm going to put a little bit of purple. I'm going to draw some attention to this fence. So I want to put that little garden gate thing. I'm going to put some of the color in there. But the rest of it doesn't even need any coloring. So that's really all there is to coloring that up. I do have an area here. I want to show you how you use. This is your blender pen. I got a little bit of purple in my green. So I can use that to move that color around. It's going to lighten that up a lot, so you're going to see like this little white stroke that shows up there. It's kind of removed my color a bit. So I'm going to then go back in with my lighter green and just drop the green back in. Okay? So that's all there is to that. You get these markers out of the way. Sorry about that noise. I'm dropping my markers into their little bin. Because now I want to show you how we can put this together. And I think this is going to be really cute when it's done. So right now, Alan, we got to zoom back out a bit because I can't get the whole thing on here. me get all my tools up here. Where's my foam? Here we go. A little bit more. A little more. Okay, that's good. So I cut this, oh, I almost dropped it. I cut this base here out of a double-sided paper. You can see the little stitching that's cut with one of our slimline dies. And then I have, this is the, this isn't what I wanted. Wait a minute. That was the frame that I wanted to show you, but I'm not using it on my card. This is the piece that was cut out of the frame. So I cut that frame with the two largest dies, and then I used the piece on the inside. So don't think that this is a throwaway. You can use this. So I'm going to pop this up. Whoa. I'm going to pop this up on, I'm sorry, just put this on the front on some tape. I don't want it popped up. I misspoke. Because I have other things that are going to be popped up on here. Let me make sure that's straight. There you go. So cute already. I love it. So now we've got, let me get my foam. Here's my foam. This is all I got left. I've got these little squares that I cut out. And I'm going to go ahead. This is how I want these to look. They're actually going to look like this, except we're going to put some things on foam. So these are all those little squares. I'm going to go ahead and put, Alan, I'm telling you guys, today was a bad day. What's going on? This is ripping my paper. Did you see that? My tape just ripped the paper. All right, we're going to do this a different way. When in doubt, Stephanie's rolling her eyes at me. I'm going to a liquid adhesive because I just tore my paper and I don't know how that's going to work now. So I'm going to a liquid adhesive. I'm telling you, this is just one of those days. You guys ever had those days where it's like all these little things seem to just not work out? I was just telling a couple people before we were going live, I'm a little afraid to go live because I don't know what's going to happen. I didn't know if it was going to be a catastrophe or not. So there we go. There's one. Now where's the other one? Did I lose it? What am I doing? Oh, it's right here. I'm telling you guys. This is where I come across a little bit as a airhead on camera. And it's right in front of you. How can you not see it? I don't know. It happens. All right, so that one is going to go there. I'm hoping these are straight, and I'm also hoping at the same time my head's not in the camera. There we go. Next up, I want to have this in the center, and that's where the foam is going to come in. I want to put these little pieces on foam, these little squares. So I'm going to pop this one up, and we're going to pop this one up. Are people still out there?
Yes, but over time, by the way.
I'm over time already? Yes. All right, so let's lay this one on here. See if I can get that straight. I don't think it's straight. It's hard when I can't put my head over the top of it to see if I'm lining it up where it needs to be. I hope that's right. Looks like it's off when I look in the camera a little bit, but oh wow. There we go. And then these other two pieces I'm going to put flat. And this is just to mimic that plaid that I have, because I thought it'd be really pretty just to add that plaid back into the center. There we go. And now you're probably wondering, what is she going to do with those characters? This is where I thought I could, on a little piece of foam, just add in these little characters, really cute, with this little background. She's facing in, so I thought I could put her kind of like right here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to use everything that I colored or not. I don't think it's going to look good if I put a cat over here because it's too dark. So I'm going to put, what am I going to put? Actually, maybe I have to. I think I'm going to put her over here. Wah! Dropping everything. What's going on with me? Let's put a couple of pumpkins over here. There's that one. And then this needs to be a little bit smaller. So, you know, your cards don't have to have a ton of stuff. I know I always do a lot of cards that have, oh my goodness, I can't get this off of here. I always do cards that have a lot of, you know, scenic elements and stuff, a full scene and stuff in there. But they don't always have to be like that. You can, you know what, I'm going to put that on there because I think that'll show up. You can just put a few elements on and have a really, really sweet card. Oops, we don't want the upside down guy there, do we? There we go. I think we can leave it just like that. I think it looks really cute. I wanted to put these little cats on here, but I don't think they're going to work. I don't think it's, maybe on the inside if I finish the card on the inside. But I think that works. And I think that that gives you some really, really good ideas of how you can use these dies. I still have to put that on my card base, and I can do that after, but I think this works. Actually, let me do it now, because I will forget. And then if I don't put it on there, I won't be able to hold it up for you guys. So let's go ahead and do that, and then I think we're going to be done. There we go. And I think it works. I think it's really cute. Okay. Ah. Oh my goodness. I feel like so many things went wrong there. I hope you guys got a really good idea of all the things that you can do with these dies, and hopefully you guys got some really nice coloring techniques out of there. I'm really, really sorry we were having trouble with the stream. I don't know what was happening. Ellen kept telling me that it was going out on Facebook and stuff, so I apologize for that. We are going to put the whole thing up on YouTube, so if you didn't catch some of it because it was going out, then hopefully you'll be able to watch it back there. But anyway, we've got to have a winner for tonight. What are we going to win? Let's do, you know what? Let's do the other slimline. We did on Tuesday. We did the slimline corner scallop. So tonight we're going to do the slimline scallop. So we'll do this one tonight. So the winner is Marilyn M. Do we have a last name?
M.
Marilyn M., you're the winner. You win the slimline scallop die set. Yay, Marilyn! Marilyn, we need you to send us an email with your complete mailing address. You're going to send it to customerservice@ldrscreative.com, and we will be able to get your slimline die set out to you right away. It's a slimline scallop, so you get to have some fun and do some of the stuff that I was doing tonight. Yay! Anyway, we are way over on time. We're about 8 minutes over on time. Tonight is Thursday, so we will reconvene right back here on Tuesday. So what is that, 5 days from now, I believe? So I hope you guys will have a wonderful weekend. Hopefully hopefully the whole weather situation is going to calm down, and you know, those of you who are experiencing, you know, high winds and rains, hopefully you guys will all be safe. And hopefully we'll see you all back here on Tuesday. So thank you, everybody. I had a wonderful time. I hope you guys learned a little something. I don't know. I hope it wasn't boring for you. That's always my biggest hope. So anyway, thank you guys. I hope you have a great night, and we'll see you back here in about 5 days. Good night.